You are listening to the Air Raid Hour with host Judge Mathis, dog, Tilt Money, dog, presented by the fine folks over at the Cover One Sports Network, dogs. Bills Mafia, let's go!
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the divisional round edition of the Air Raid Hour Cover One pregame show. My name is Steve Mathis. You can find me on Twitter at Judge Mathis, joined as always by my co-host Dave Tilton. You can find him on Twitter at Tilt Money. Together, we are the Bills guys, and this show is presented by Picasso's Pizza and the Cover One Sports Network. Dave, comment section already popping off. Can't wait to get to some of the comments in the comment section. Josh Allen and the number 2 seed Buffalo Bills today take on Joe Burrow and the number 3 seed Cincinnati Bengals in Buffalo for the right to play an injured Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. You might notice I'm not rocking, other than the hat, I'm not rocking any Bills gear. And the reason why I am doing so is because I have no idea what is and what is not jinxed anymore. I'm also worried about what TV to watch the game on. So I'm trying to figure that out as well before the game starts. So how are you feeling heading into the divisional round? Because my stomach is in knots and I'm trying to think of everything I can do to get the football gods on the Buffalo Bills side today.
Yeah, for me, work week was really busy, kind of distracted me. Didn't really feel any nerves all week until yesterday when I started watching playoff football, like the divisional round. Like when I started watching that Chiefs Jags game, like the switch turned on for me and I instantly went from like not really stressing a lot to like instantly like gotta really want the Jags to win this game. What's going on with Mahomes? Eagles Giants game really inconsequential, but it really started hitting me this weekend and the nerves really picked up. And if you don't have a little bit of nerves today, like I don't know what to tell you. That's you're a better person than me. Because I definitely have nerves. We're still a couple hours obviously away from game time. At this point, we're doing the pregame a little early before the game, but yeah, I'm nervy, man. And the thing is like you mentioned it, an injured Patrick Mahomes. If the Bills win, they go to this neutral site for this AFC Championship game. And this is the matchup that a couple weeks ago, obviously the Damar situation took priority, but this is the matchup that a lot of people were saying was the game of the year at that time. And a lot of people were saying is the best game of this weekend slate of games. And I don't disagree. So it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be fun. And I just hope, obviously, it turns out in the Bills' favor.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday was the appetizer. Mahomes' injury made Jags Chiefs a little bit interesting in the second half there. Obviously, the Eagles just demolished the New York Football Giants. All apologies to Brian Daboll. It was a good run for him there. He's got to get a little bit more talent there in the middle.
4th and 8 early in the game was it, man. Them going for it on that 4th and 8 on the Eagles 40 early in the game totally changed the game, in my opinion. Anyway, but
today it is a football fan's dream. You have these two huge offenses in Buffalo and Cincinnati, and then you have these two sort of franchises. Like, no offense to the Buffalo Bills, who I think have the best fans in the league. Everywhere I go in Arizona, outside of Bills Mafia, it's Cowboys gear, it's 49ers gear.
And
this is huge franchises and two pretty good football teams that are going to be playing after Bills Bengals. Hopefully we can enjoy it because we're not too sad from a Bills loss.
Well, and this Niners Cowboys, I mean, people in the chat probably remember, some people probably a little too young, but they had some epic battles in the late 80s, obviously, and early 90s, and some of those playoff matchups as well. So very, whatever you want to say about them, a lot of history with both of those franchises in the playoffs. So it'll be a good game. A lot of people giving Dallas a chance in that game. So we'll see.
Yeah, this whole day is like a throwback to the late 80s, early 90s with Bills, Bengals, and then obviously Cowboys, Niners. Just the tip of Canoe comes in with the super chat. I always appreciate. He says, Chris Collinsworth sounds like the commentator after Happy Gilmore got hit by the Volkswagen. Let's go Bills, and hit that like button. Thank you. Always appreciate it. Yeah. I just shared on my social a really funny clip somebody put together of Chris Collinsworth applauding and saying what a great play it was for Patrick Mahomes to throw the ball into the dirt when the ball like literally fell out of his hands on one of those third down throws. called it like a great throwaway. He praised Mahomes, and then that down the field shot that Trevor Lawrence took early in the game to Christian Kirk, where it was not an overthrow. Christian Kirk just like tripped. He called it an overthrow. So just you could see the difference when Chris Collinsworth talks about Patrick Mahomes compared to when Chris Collinsworth talks about other quarterbacks. It's not normal.
Did Patrick Mahomes invent the sidearm throw? That's what it certainly seems like. Like Matthew Stafford was throwing sidearm throws years ago before Patrick Mahomes was even in the NFL. So again, like, yeah, it's not. I was in a restaurant watching the game while it's happening. So there's no audio, so I didn't have to hear it. So that made it a little better.
No offense to this pregame show here, but I'm just about ready for this game to start. The national narrative all week has been that Josh Allen can't be trusted and that Joe Burrow is some sort of demigod that is pretty much unbeatable. And it's been an unbearable week. I turned on ESPN radio the other night when I was driving in the evening time with my wife, and she made me turn it off because she thought I was going to drive the car off the road in a fit of rage at some of the BS narratives that they were spewing. I think at one point this week, Bill Simmons on his podcast called Daniel Jones a thinking man's Josh Allen. It's been a long week for Bills Mafia, and I'll tell you what, I'm just ready for this game to start.
It's been a long week. I've been off. Like, you would think I would be on social media more leading up to this week, kind of like, because it's such a big, but it honestly has kind of turned me away. It turned me off a bit. So I'm obviously got back into it a little bit yesterday and today, but yeah, I think just the waiting game of this game, kind of like being a game that almost was played obviously on Monday night several weeks back, now is finally going to be played. There's a lot of buildup to this matchup, right? And everyone kind of foresaw this collision course coming in the playoffs once the bracket came out, or once the bracket shook out the way it did. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm ready for it one way or another. And man, it'll feel nice if the Bills can come out and win this game, and we could put a lot of those narratives to bed.
So let's actually get down to it and let's start talking about this game. Obviously, the inactives list don't come out for a couple of hours yet. But Jordan Phillips, Daquan Jones for the Buffalo Bills listed as questionable. Eli Ankou and Kingsley Jonathan elevated from the practice squad. To me, the Ankou call-up signals that it's likely that one of these two defensive tackles is out for this game. I'm leaning towards Jordan Phillips again. What are your thoughts on the Bills injury report, and who do you think Ankou is going to slide in for?
Probably Jordan Phillips would be my guess. I mean, it certainly seems like, look, he missed the last game, right? So if you're looking at sort of maybe a trend to say like, okay, well, Daquan played last game. He's been limited all week. There's not been any real indication that Daquan's necessarily going to miss the game, but Jordan's obviously coming back from a pre-existing injury, and my guess is that he probably sits again. So that would be my guess right now. Obviously, we're doing the show before the inactives come out, so
yeah,
my money would be on Jordan Phillips sitting down this game.
Yeah, Roy Collins comes in and says, so no John Brown then, no Isaiah McKenzie's back, so the 5 receivers today are going to be Diggs, Davis, McKenzie, Shakir, and Cole Beasley. That's what the Buffalo Bills will be trotting out on offense. There's always the possibility that Ankou is the inactive, right? Like Daquan Jones, Jordan Phillips, one of or both of them are truly game time decisions, and the Buffalo Bills have to make that decision at kickoff. But Jordan Phillips has been playing through a pretty nasty shoulder injury that I'm surprised he's been playing through. So I wouldn't be surprised if Jordan Phillips is the kind of guy who he might be out until next week, or maybe even he's a guy that the Buffalo Bills probably don't think that they can truly rely on or count on for more than just a rotation of the snaps until a Super Bowl matchup if they were to advance to the Super Bowl. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think there might be a slight chance too that both could be inactive and that Boogie Basham would have to kick inside. The Bills have been using their top like 2 or 3 guys a lot more lately. So maybe you see like Tim Settle, Ed Oliver get most of the run at defensive tackle, them rotate Ankou and Basham in, because the other guy that they called up was Kingsley Jonathan. So you have Kingsley Jonathan that you could kick in as DE number 4, or the more likely scenario here, because I do not think that the Buffalo Bills do that, is that Kingsley Jonathan was called up for sort of his pass rush pop. and maybe something like an extra linebacker is inactive this week. And that was a conversation we had after the show against the Dolphins. We were sitting here upset at ourselves because we were legitimately discussing calling up a practice squad defensive end to just generate some semblance of a pass rush without a blitz. So what are your thoughts on Kingsley Jonathan? Does he play? Does he not play? And just his name being activated this week.
I mean, it's kind of like, it kind of made me sad a little bit to watch parts of that Eagles Giants broadcast last night when they're talking about the 4 Eagles players with double-digit sacks and then Hassan Reddick. And I'm like, oh man, I wish Von Miller was there because it just makes everything better. And now the Bills, contrasting to the Eagles, are struggling to find that pass rush pop. And I think they're willing to try. Right, anything in a game where the Bengals O-line is beat up, as we know. And Joe Burrow was sacked 4 times last week against the Ravens. We know that's an opportunity for the Bills to take advantage of in a matchup that you're looking for any slight edge you can find. So Kingsley Jonathan, probably being, I'm not saying he's a better pass rusher outright than Gregory Rousseau, but like maybe from just a pure skill set standpoint, he is more of a pure pass rushing type of player that can give you something a little different. So, this one's tough because I personally would rather see that happen and have a linebacker inactive, because it's not like Edmonds and Milano are coming off the field. Like, they're going to play probably 100% of the snaps. Bills are going to be a nickel almost all day, like they usually are with Taron Johnson. So like the value of these extra linebackers being active is really just purely for special teams. And in a game like this, I'd rather have the guy that maybe could get to the quarterback once and make a big play.
Yeah, Jessica Tennis comes in with a great response. She says Jonathan might have been a call up just to give him more money. That's always a possibility in these scenarios. The Bills tended to do it late in the season. So during the season, you only get to call a player up 3 times. So towards the end of the season, when they know that they're not going to call a player up 3 times, you start to see guys get called up and then placed on the inactive list because they get a bigger check. They get an active roster game check as opposed to a practice squad check. So the Buffalo Bills could be just rewarding a guy like Kingsley Jonathan, doing him a solid, calling him up, but then making him inactive because they have unlimited call-ups. And then obviously it wouldn't affect his ability to play if there was an injury to any defensive lineman or anything like that, and he gets the bigger check. William Swan comes in and says they're going to kick Greg inside. I love Kingsley. He has great bend. And I think that's really interesting too, because we're going to get into this when we get into the individual matchups and the offensive versus defensive matchups. Just muddying the pocket for Joe Burrow and making him struggle to see the middle of the field could be really a important factor in today's game. And what better player to do that than Groot? And then another guy who's going to be a big factor in this game, Tremaine Edmonds. So just giving Joe Burrow something to think about right in front of his face could be a huge key for the Buffalo Bills today. Let's take a look at the Bengals injury report. Jonah Williams, Alex Kappa out. They joined La'el Collins, who tore his ACL earlier on in the season. So the Bengals are going to be without their starting left tackle, their starting right guard, and their starting right tackle. From left to right, it's going to be Jackson Carman, Cordell Volson, Ted Karras, Max Sharping, and Hakeem Adeniji. What are your thoughts on the Bengals inactive list, or these guys who are going to be inactive?
Well, I'll say this, and this is something Aaron Quinn mentioned early in the week, and I have to agree with him. I think that from what we saw last week against the Dolphins, Skylar Thompson largely getting the ball out quickly, and the Bills still not being able to get a huge amount of pressure on Skylar when the Dolphins offensive line had been very banged up. To me, this is a game where this might be more of an impact in the Bengals from their running game standpoint than it will be from the passing game, because I expect the Bengals and Joe Burrow to be getting the ball out quickly, to try to protect from this sort of maligned offensive line or this beat up offensive line. Right now, we saw what happened early in the season with the Bengals in the first month of the season. Burrow was getting clobbered those first few weeks. There was a game he got sacked 6 or 7 times. And I think the Bengals are going to try to avoid that today. They're going to work the quick passing game. I think they're going to try to get the ball out of Burrow's hands quickly to avoid or cover up some of those deficiencies the Bengals are going to have on the offensive line from a pass protection standpoint. So I think where this really may affect the Bengals is in the running game and the Bills' ability to shut down a guy like Joe Mixon and kind of make the Bengals a bit more one-dimensional. The Bengals are talented everywhere. Joe Mixon's super talented. If the Bills can make the Bengals a little more one-dimensional and kind of really force that offensive line into a lot more passing plays, then that's where I kind of see the impact more. So I wouldn't automatically assume this is just going to be like a sack fest for the Bills just because these guys are out.
Yeah, 100%. And another big injury for the Bengals is Trey Flowers is doubtful for this game. He's sort of the guy that they use against the Chiefs against Travis Kelce. He's sort of their tight end stopper. So that's going to leave snaps for guys like Akeem Davis-Gaither and Dax Hill, their first round pick, who hasn't gotten a lot of run this year. Both of those guys were favorites of us in the pre-draft process. We liked both that Akeem Davis-Gaither, the linebacker, and Dax Hill, the corner slash safety. It could be interesting. Maybe this could be a Dawson Knox game because even though we liked them in the pre-draft process, the Bengals haven't trusted them too much this year. It's been Trey Flowers in those types of situations.
Well, and the Bengals are number 5 DVOA against the tight end this year, but without Trey Flowers, that becomes a really interesting proposition, right? Is this something that for this one game without Trey Flowers, the matchups kind of go contrarian to the DVOA from the totality of the season, where the Bengals have been really good at defending the tight end this year. Without Trey Flowers, maybe that's a matchup that's potentially going to get overlooked by some, but maybe shouldn't be because Trey Flowers is not going to play. Dawson Knox could be a guy that could make an impact. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit when I talk about my overarching themes for this game and where I feel like the Bills need to match toe to toe for the Bengals, Dawson Knox being one of those as well.
Yeah, a lot to think about in this game, and the weather could be something to think about today as well. The projected forecast, 30 degrees, cloudy, and it's projected about 1 to 2 inches of snow. The report I was reading this morning was it should start right around 3 p.m. game time. It might hold off until around halftime, but there should be some snow. This could be a minor snow game, only 1 to 2 inches. The biggest concern, something that I hope does not happen, is that, and who knows, maybe it is a positive thing if it happens because of the injuries to the Bengals offensive line, but I really hope, for the sake of just general entertainment of this football game, that it doesn't turn into a rain snow mix because the temperature is in the 30s. But anything about the forecast concern you at all today?
I do think, oddly enough, I think in that situation, I do think it favors the Bills a bit more, right? With the Bengals offensive line beat up, I don't think they're going to be especially great run blocking. And that could be a factor in maybe slowing down the Bengals passing game a bit. And dare I say, the Bills may have a better chance to be more balanced on offense than the Bengals do in this game. So, and with Josh Allen running the ball as an X factor, Joe Burrow can run the ball too. Don't get me wrong. He's very good at running the ball, but Josh Allen's obviously another level. It could be something that turns into an advantage for the Bills.
Speaking of advantage for the Bills, Carl Sheffers is on the call today. His crew has the most penalties called this season, but the Bills are 9-2 under Carl Sheffers since 2011, and they've won 5 straight with him. 4 of the 5 times, or 3 of the 5 times. I can't remember because I didn't write it down. But a good chunk of that 5-game winning streak. Not only have they won the money line, but they've covered the spread as well. So maybe we got a little good luck charm officiating today as well. Or do the Bills' luck run dry? Who knows?
Well, this is the thing that was interesting that I actually wasn't aware of until last night, and I probably should have been, is that they give the best referees or the best officials at each position games in the playoffs. So Carl Sheffers is the lead official, but I don't know how many of his specific crew is going to be with him today. There'll be some, I'm sure, because there were some with Clete Blakeman last night. He had some of his own crew, but it is going to be a mixture. It's not going to be all Carl Sheffers guys with him today. So we'll see if that factors in maybe a little bit.
Sorry, I didn't mean to possibly put a jinx on anybody or the Bills. So my apologies there. All right, before we get into the individual matchups, things like offense versus defense, this show is brought to you by Picasso's Pizza. 4 great locations in Williamsville, West Seneca, Lancaster, and Blaisdell. Buffalo Pizza since 1980. You can order online at picassospizza.net. And if you're not a towner like us, You can even get it mailed to your home. And I can tell you from experience, it's just as good as getting it fresh from the restaurant. Again, that is Picasso'sPizza.net. And there's no better way to spice up your at-home tailgate than with that gooey, good, melty cheese, hand cut and char pepperoni, Picasso's Pizza. So if you got a chance, head on over to Picasso'sPizza.net and spice up your out-of-town tailgate or your local tailgate. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Buffalo Bills offense versus the Bengals defense. So looking at the Bengals defense, they are stout up front. They got Hubbard, Hill, Reeder, and Hendrickson along that defensive line. Those are some really good starters. They wave in guys like Cam Sample, Joseph Osai, Zach Carter. They have two stud linebackers in Jermaine Pratt and Logan Wilson, another Wyoming Cowboy who was teammates with Josh Allen. They also wave in Akeem Davis-Gaither when they go into those three linebacker sets. And then the secondary, it's a little hit or miss. You got Eli Apple and Cam Taylor-Britt at the corners. Apple is obviously always just sort of been a guy who's been torched throughout his career. How he's still employed in the National Football League, I have no idea. Cam Taylor-Britt, we all liked him a lot. We wanted him to transition to safety. He's struggling a little bit at corner, taking those rookie lumps, but there's been positives with the negatives. Obviously, got a pretty solid nickel corner in Mike Hilton. And then they have Jesse Bates and Von Bell, two pretty good safeties. And then Dax Hill, who sort of gets in there occasionally, but he was their first round pick, and he'll be a part of their future once Jesse Bates hits free agency. The Bengals over the last 6 weeks, 10th overall in DVOA on defense, 16th against the pass, 4th against the run. The Bills on offense, 5th overall over the last 6 weeks, 7th in passing, 3rd in rushing. The Bengals are stout up front, but they have to show that they can, but they have shown that you can beat them through the air. I expect this to be another game where Josh Allen in the passing game sort of dwarfs the running game. What are your thoughts here?
No, I tend to agree. And this is going to be kind of one of my first, I guess, overarching themes for today. And key to the Bills winning is the complementary pieces outside of Stephon Diggs really need to step up today for the Bills. They're going to have to go toe-to-toe with the Bengals trio of Higgins, Chase, and Boyd. Who's going to step up besides Stephon Diggs? And you mentioned, and we mentioned this on the preview for the Monday night game as well, you know, the Bengals are one of the worst teams at defending the number 2 wide receiver per DVOA. You mentioned Trey Flowers being out. That's a potential arrow up matchup for a team that's been good against defending the tight end traditionally this year. And what guys is playoff Gabe going to show up and be that great playoff performer that we've seen from him the last couple of years? And knowing the Bengals have been really bad against number 2 wide receivers, is Dawson Knox going to show up in the absence of Trey Flowers? What are we going to get from McKenzie today? What are we going to get from Shakir today? What complementary pieces are going to step up outside of Stephon Diggs? And I think it should come as no surprise that, to me, it's Gabriel Davis is the guy that has to step up as the number 2. It's a great matchup for him. You mentioned the struggles of Eli Apple. This is a spot where Gabriel Davis, you know, conditions permitting, really needs to step up for this Bills team. So for me, complementary pieces for the Bills offense today in the passing game, as you mentioned, which I think is going to be the primary driver, are going to have to step up big today. It cannot be only Stephon Diggs today.
Yeah, 100%. I'm with you. Their DVOA against number 2 receivers is not great. So Gabriel Davis, I think, next needs to step up. With Trey Flowers out, I think Dawson Knox needs to step up. And I really do. And we're going to get into this later on in the show. I think Diggs, Davis, and Knox each need to be pushing 100 yards. And I think they each need to score a touchdown in this game, because I really do think it's going to be a shootout. So I think those are the 3 guys that we need to rely on in this passing game. And it's going to be a different week than it was against the Miami Dolphins. I don't think you're going to see as many deep shots. Looking at some of the SIS defensive tendencies for the Cincinnati Bengals, they ain't going to run much unless they really were inspired by what the Dolphins did. You're not going to see the Cincinnati Bengals running a lot of, if any, cover 0 in this football game. They are a 29% 3-3-5, 24% 3-4-4, 19% 4-2-5, 10% 2-4-5, and 6% 3-2-6 defense. they will throw a ton of different looks at you, and they will shift their personnel around. They are sixth in the NFL with a 34% use of 7-man boxes. They hardly ever use a light box. They're 30th in the NFL with 37% usage over the last 6 weeks. They stack the box 5th most in the NFL over the last 6 weeks at 29%. They mix it pretty evenly, 50-50 between 1 high shell and 2 high shell. And then here's some interesting things. Only a 27% blitz rate, not very high. 62% 4-man rushes. So you're going to see just them utilize those 4 guys to try to get at the quarterback and drop everyone else back into coverage. And 11% 3-man rush, which is 11th in the NFL. Their game plan against Josh Allen is going to be very much that Vic Fangio style, pressure with 4 or pressure with 3 and drop everybody else back into coverage. So you're going to see a different approach, I think, for the Buffalo Bills this week on offense.
You should, right? And the Bengals are going to do what they've done to slow down teams like the Bills, which is going to be put to the test today. Obviously, we haven't really seen it in action, but slow down teams like the Chiefs, right? Like the three man fronts and dropping, 8 guys back. Like this is the Bengals recipe for beating teams like the Chiefs, and probably should be the same recipe for beating a team like the Bills. So I do agree with you. It's going to be probably a not polar opposite, but a contrast to what the Dolphins did. And I think you're going to see the Bengals playing a ton of zone today, 7, 8 guys back in coverage in some cases, and forcing the Bills to go on long drives. Like you mentioned, maybe fewer deep shots from the Bills today because of that, and forcing the Bills to go on long drives to beat them. And we saw that in the early stages of that Monday night game a couple weeks back. The Bills on that first drive of the game, it was a long drive, many plays, resulted in a field goal. The Bengals are going to take that every time. So
yeah,
totally agree.
And that's going to be a huge factor today for the Bills offense as well. You need to convert in the red zone. Like the last 2 weeks, we said just stack points. It's okay to kick field goals because we felt the Buffalo Bills defense was good enough to shut down both of these offenses. Kind of wrong in both situations because the Patriots put up some points, and because of short fields, because of turnovers, the Dolphins put up some points. But in this pregame show the last 2 weeks, we've been preaching just stack points. Not the case this week. Stack touchdowns. Like that's what you're going to have to do to beat the Cincinnati Bengals. Roy Collins comes in and says, Kelsey seems to get open so easily. Why can't we scheme Knox to do something similar? I just don't think that Knox is will ever be on the level of Travis Kelsey in terms of that route running ability, but Dawson Knox is still a weapon, and we need to get the ball in his hands. And I would love to see some things schemed up to get the ball in his hands with some space, because I do, like I said this last week, I feel like the team gets pumped up when Dawson Knox gets the ball in his hands with an ability to create some yards after the catch. He lays his shoulder on guys, he stiff arms guys, he knocks them to the ground, he gains those extra 2-3 yards, and it pumps everybody up. You could see the sideline just explode when Dawson Knox gets the ball in his hands and makes that type of play. The first one I think he ever made as a Buffalo Bill was that stiff arm in the Cincinnati game about 3 years ago. So
yeah, that was our backdrop for the show today.
Yeah. Get the ball into Dawson Knox's hand early. Get the ball into Dawson Knox's hand often. That should be the Buffalo Bills game plan today. Well, obviously still feeding guys like Gabriel Davis and Stephon Diggs. And speaking of Stephon Diggs, Eli Apple, Cam Taylor-Britt, come on. Stephon Diggs, he needs to be him today.
Yep. This is the game. We saw it was looking like he was going to be in line for a really big game in the prior Monday nighter. He was amped up. He was juiced. He obviously has been had a couple good games in a row now, leading up to this game. But there's also a little bit of, I don't want to call it a rivalry, but there's a little bit of who's better, right? Or who's going to have the better game between Jamar Chase, the up and coming absolute stud receiver for the Bengals, and Stephon Diggs. And he wants to show, I'm sure he's going to want to show in this game that he is the man, and he's not going to want to get outshined by Jamar Chase. We've already heard enough about another LSU receiver in Justin Jefferson, obviously with the trade that was made between the Vikings and the Bills around comparing those two. Don't really want to see us having to talk about another comparison of an LSU receiver and Jamar Chase to Stephon Diggs in this. So he is going to be, if there's one guy besides Josh Allen on this team that I'm not worried about being fired up and ready to go and give it his best, it's Stephon Diggs.
For sure. All right. So I mentioned already that there won't be as much, if any, cover zero in this football game. Do we see a more cautious, maybe that's a bad word, but a more cautious Josh Allen this game? And by that, I mean, last week, 0 catches between Devin Singletary and James Cook. Do the running backs get more involved in the passing game today?
Well, it's a very interesting matchup, right? Because Cincinnati's number 2 DVOA defense against defending running backs as receivers. So the matchup is not great. You talked about the studs, Pratt and Wilson. Those guys can cover. They're very good coverage linebackers. They're, as we mentioned in the pregame for the Monday Nighter, could be the next up and coming duo that can be put in the same breath as guys like Edmonds and Milano as far as a pair of linebackers in the league. So I'd like to see those guys worked in. But I will say I think it's going to be a tough matchup for the running backs out of the backfield as far as them being receivers. Maybe on some improvisation, you could see some plays, but I would caution that if you're expecting like a huge James Cook game out of that, or a huge Singletary game out of the backfield as far as catches, I would temper those expectations slightly given the talent of those linebackers that the Bengals have, and given that they're likely to be dropping back a ton of guys in the coverage. So could they still nickel and dime them down the field 3-4 yards here and there? Like, sure. But I wouldn't expect you're going to see like 5 catches apiece from these guys today.
Yeah. And I will say this, though. I think they do need to pop off some big runs to help supplement the passing game.
I agree with that.
And I'm pretty confident they can, because even though the Bengals are, let me pull this back up here, fourth against the run in DVOA, James Cook had a couple of big runs in that game that they played in Cincinnati before the game was obviously paused for or canceled for Damar Hamlin. But so the running game can't go away, and it can't be Josh Allen throwing the ball 60 times. The running game has to be able to supplement Josh Allen, and hopefully Devin Singletary, James Cook, they can each get the ball probably maybe like, I don't know, 8 to 10 times each, get us like 16 to 20 carries, and each of them average about 4 to 5 yards per carry.
Let me throw this stat out there for you, and let me ask you if you would take these statistics from Singletary and Cook. 13 carries for 62 yards, 4.8. 12 carries for 39 yards, 3.3. And let's say Josh Allen runs 9 times for 54 yards, 155 yards on the ground between the 3 of them. I think you'd sign up for that, right?
Yeah. Was that the Dolphins stat line?
No, that's what the Ravens ran. That's what the Ravens ran with Dobbins, Edwards, and Huntley against the Bengals in the playoff game last week. They had 155 yards on the ground and really had a chance to win that game.
They should have won that football game if Greg Roman wasn't such an idiot, and he's unemployed now because of it. Let's shift our focus now from the Buffalo Bills defense versus this vaunted Cincinnati Bengals offense, obviously quarterbacked by Joe Burrow. In the backfield, you have Joe Mixon, and he's pretty good third down back in Samaje Perine. Obviously, Chase, Higgins, and Boyd are the story, along with Joe Burrow. And then Hayden Hurst, coming back from that injury the last couple of weeks, has been a really good addition to that offense. Left to right on the offensive line, it is Jackson Carman, Cordarrelle Volson, Ted Karras, Max Sharping, and Akeem Adeniji. Over the last 6 weeks, they've been 8th overall in DVOA, 13th passing, 13th in rushing. Defensively, over the last 6 weeks, the Bills have been 4th overall, 6th against the pass, 5th against the run. So based on Football Outsiders metrics, the Buffalo Bills are a better passing defense than the Bengals are a passing offense, and the Bills are a better rushing defense than the Bengals are a rushing offense. So that'll be interesting for the analytics people out there to see if that holds up on game day. The storyline all week has been the Bengals O-line. Can the Buffalo Bills take advantage?
Yes, they can, but I think the Bengals are going to scheme their way out of it. I mean, not fully necessarily, but I think it's going to be a lot of quick passing from the Bengals. They're going to use the size of T. Higgins on some of these quick routes. I think they're going to use the shiftiness of Jamar Chase, the savviness of Tyler Boyd. This quick passing game for the Bengals, I think, is going to be the key for the Bills, as far as like they're going to need to force the Bengals into some 3rd and longs and to some field goals. I think I would like to see like a nice dose of Kyrie Lim in this game, going up against a guy
Yeah.
like, like Higgins potentially. Johnson's going to have his hands full against Tyler Boyd in the slot. And then obviously it's Trey and Chase. And for me, I think the chances of the Bills being able to kind of unleash, if you will, or taking advantage of those injuries on that Bengals offensive line, they're going to have to be successful on first and second down. They're going to have to force the Bengals into 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 7s, and longer. If the Bengals are sitting there in 3rd and 4s, 3rd and 3s all day, then that's where I think this Bills defense might struggle to get off the field. So for me, if you want to take advantage of this offensive line and their injuries, and it's great and it sounds great in theory, you have to do your job on first and second down. And that means the Bills have to be better at tackling. They're one of the worst tackling teams for PFF. We've seen it with the eye test. They've had their moments where they've struggled tackling. They've been a little bit inconsistent, and they're going to have to defend Mixon and P. Ryan out of the backfield as well in the passing game, as far as that quick passing game and sort of the Bengals sort of plan, I think, to again mask that offensive line. So tackling for the Bills, getting the Bengals into 3rd and longs, first and second down defense is huge today for the Bills.
And that's the key word, is tackling. Like, how important are the DB's ability to tackle today going to be? Matt Milano, Tremaine Edmonds, there can't be any missed tackles today when they get out to the edge. That was an issue against the Dolphins. There was a couple of times where they picked up a first down. One time I think it hurt us. The other time it didn't so much, but it was just missed tackles by the linebackers that allow guys to pick up first downs as the Dolphins were driving. So tackling is going to be such an important issue this week. But you mentioned that the Bengals are going to try to scheme their way out of this offensive line. Since week 14, 6 weeks, since week 14, the Bengals, 85% usage of 11 personnel, which leads the NFL, 91% shotgun usage, which is number 2 in the NFL, 83% short dropbacks, which is number 1 in the NFL, and 55% of the time, this is another key thing here too, 55% of the time, they run into a light box, which is number 1 in the NFL. Their running game hasn't been good this year, but they haven't gone away from it. And that's one of the things that I'm a little bit worried about heading into today's game. Ed Oliver has not been the same since his second injury this season. Jordan Phillips may not play, has not been the same since his shoulder injury. Daquan Jones is now dealing with an injury. Maybe the Bengals, who haven't statistically been the best running team this year, but are still willing to do it and still have a good back in Joe Mixon. Let's hope that running game doesn't get off the ground today, because the Buffalo Bills are probably going to be playing a ton of nickel, and they're not going to stack the box. And when teams don't stack the box against the Bengals, they're number 1 in the NFL running into it. Not statistically, but just their usage of it.
And that gets back to kind of what I was saying at the beginning of the show, right? With this Bengals offensive line, everyone wants to focus on like, what's that going to mean from a pass protection standpoint? For me, it's going to be what they can do in the running game. And like you said, with Jones banged up, we don't know if him or Phillips are going to be active. Are the Bengals going to be able to run the ball with this banged up offensive line and take advantage potentially of some Bills injuries as well? It's going to be an interesting chess match on that front, because again, this is an area where even if the Bills are maybe slightly undermanned, you have to sort of match maybe that undermannedness, if that's a term we can use, of the Bengals offensive line and still be able to shut down Joe Mixon in the running game. You've got to make the Bengals one-dimensional. And it also goes back to what I just said about stopping the Bengals on first and second down.
Yeah.
If you're giving up 4 or 5 yards to Joe Mixon on first down against this offensive line, it's not going to matter how banged up they are. It's going to be a long day for you.
Yeah, and I know you already touched on this, but I want to touch on it again. I really hope that Kyrie Elam gets the start over Dane Jackson today. That's going to be one of the things that I look for in pregame warmups, and I hope one of the beat reporters have the self-awareness to tweet this out before the game, who's running at CB2 out there when they're doing their warmups. Like, that's something that I'm going to keep an eye on as well. And yeah, I like the Kyrie Elam matchup against a guy like T. Higgins, but man, this team talks about find a way, right? Like, that's one of their catchphrases, one of their mantras: find a way. Whatever you do, just find a way, win the football game. And I feel like today, the find a way should not just be applied to winning the football game. It's find a way to generate a pass rush by only sending 3 or 4 guys, because this secondary is going to have their hands full with these 3 wide receivers and Joe Mixon coming out of the backfield and Hayden Hurst. how does the secondary, how do you think they hold up against these wide receivers today?
I mean, it's going to have to be a bend but don't break day, right? Like if you're the Bills, or if you're a fan, if you're watching this game, like the Bills are going to give up yards today. Like there's no way around it. Like this Bengals team is too good. You have to buckle up in the red zone. You have to hold the Bengals to field goals. You have to force them to go on long, sustained drives, come up and tackle. Tackling is going to be huge. You cannot be poor at tackling today. You have to keep everything in front of you, come up, make the tackles. Like, I don't think that can be understated. Like the Bills can't afford missed tackles today in key moments on 3rd and 15s, on 3rd and 12s, where we've seen the Bills at times recently be suspect to giving up some of these 3rd and longs. Like if you get the Bengals into 3rd and long, you need to get off the field, or you need to hold them there where they are and hold them to a field goal. You cannot give them first downs on 3rd and long. So I expect the Bills to force the Bengals to try to move the ball down the field 12, 15 plays at a time, just like I think the Bengals are going to try to do the Bills. I think they'll have very similar game plans defensively against each other. And the Bills are going to have to try to get some kind of pass rush with that front four. Greg Rousseau, whether it's Kingsley Jonathan, if he happens to be active, Epinesa, whoever, there's going to have to be somebody that steps up on that defensive line to get some pressure, because this secondary, like you said, is going to be tested today. And I think the Bills coaching staff will know that, and they're going to have to be a bend but don't break style today. And I think like you're going to have to be okay with giving up yards between the 20s and trying to hold this team to field goals.
Yeah. Stephen Believes comes in and says Dean Marlowe. He's my biggest concern on this defense right now, and how he holds up against all of these, wide receivers and guys like Hayden Hurst and Joe Mixon coming out of the backfield. And then a ton of people in the comment section, I think, bring up a really good point. Bat the ball down. We have a lot of length along our defensive line. So one of the things you can do if you're not rushing a lot of guys, and if they are doing a quick, short passing game, is, our guys like Gregory Rousseau could be knocking the ball down. So that should be a point of emphasis for the Buffalo Bills defense this week. Before we get to special teams, I think once again, this is going to be a Milano Edmonds game. Their creeper pressures, their sideline to sideline tackling, their covering in the flats, they're supporting the run defense when we're in light boxes. They're covering the middle of the field. Guys like Tyler Boyd and Hayden Hurst, they're going to be vital. And our defense starts and stops. I think we're at the point now where our defense used to stop and start with, Poyer and Hyde. Now our defense sort of starts and stops with the way Matt Milano and Tremaine Edmonds play.
Agree. I 100% agree with that. Like those two are the key today. Communication, obviously key. They're the studs of the defense at this point. Like Poyer's still great. He's not 100%. We don't know what's going to be happening with this defensive line today, who's going to be in and out. Like it's Edmonds and Milano's defense at this point. Those are the studs. They're the young stars on the team. It's their defense. They need to step up.
Yeah, 100%. Matthew C comes in and says, I like Matt Milano, but he has a huge issue with missed tackles. I mean, at the end of the day, though, he's a first team All-Pro, and all the positives outweigh the negatives. And for every, missed tackle here or two that we notice and we remember, he's making 10, 15 really important tackles and wrapping guys up. So I wouldn't read too much into that. Obviously, he needs to be on his game today, because CR says right here, tackling matters. He who tackles best will have the advantage, and the Buffalo Bills can have the advantage today if they are wrapping guys up and tackling, because the Bengals are going to be pretty dependent on that short passing game with this injured offensive line. All right. Wow. We got 225 people in here right now. Smash that like button if you think that there is anyone who would enjoy joining in on this conversation. Hit that little share button at the bottom of your screen, copy the link, text it to somebody, friends, family, fellow Bills fans, anyone who you think might get a kick out of and enjoy the Air Raid Hour Cover 1 pregame show. That would be greatly appreciated. If not, just smash that little like button. We would really appreciate that as well. All right, before we get to our pregame superlatives, special teams. The Bengals have their own Tyler Bass and Evan McPherson of skipping the Bengals locker room to watch the halftime show at last year's Super Bowl fame. They have Drew Chrisman, a punter who Bills Mafia is pretty aware of, because he was in a kicking competition with Huber this offseason, where if he lost, he might have been the Bills punter. because Bills fans were on punter watch after the Matt Araiza situation. And then returning kicks, they got Trayvon Williams, and returning punts, they got Trent Taylor. Bengals over the last 6 weeks have been 19th in special teams DVOA. The Buffalo Bills have been 3rd in special teams DVOA. Again, special teams could play a vital role in this football game with these two juggernaut offenses going back and forth. You really make it easier on yourself by getting closer to the goal line when you start your drive, and you make it more difficult for the other offense when they have to drive a majority of the field. So special teams could be a huge factor in today's football game.
Could be a huge factor. And like you said, if the conditions are kind of iffy, kicking field goals maybe isn't as easy as it would have been otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So like, where do the coaches draw the line on where they feel comfortable in kicking? Will you see both teams, knowing how good these offenses are, be even more aggressive when they're on the opponent's side of the field? Like, even if they're on like maybe like the 25, 30-yard line, will you see that these teams go for it more on 4th down, and kind of like the kicking game maybe becomes more of a factor in a more concentrated way as opposed to more of a volume way? And then the return game, right? The Bills need to be really sound on covering kicks and covering punts. You cannot give up big returns to the Bengals, give them cheap, short fields. Like, your coverage units have to be on point today. Tyler Bass, for as good as he's been, has kicked a few balls out of bounds in recent games on kickoffs and has given teams short fields. He's done that multiple times this year. And I know the goal is to try to like make them field it in the corner and stop them before the 25, but you may be better off in the game like this just kicking it through. Do not take the risk of giving the Bengals the ball at the 40-yard line and just take the touchbacks, right? Like, so it's going to be really interesting. Could be a huge factor.
Oh, as always, this is coin flip dependent, but engaging in the double dip could be a factor too in this football game. Whether it's the Bengals or the Bills, one of these teams could possibly get a double dip advantage, and that could be the difference in the ball game. So if you're the Buffalo Bills, you probably want to be, you probably want to defer if you win the toss, because you want to have that opportunity to possibly engage in that double dip, because that could be what turns the tide in this football game. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for our pre-game superlatives. And like we said a couple of weeks ago, no more videos because the YouTube police have stopped us. But thanks to Dave, we have some fancy new overlays, and we're going to start our superlatives here with the Take Me Higher player of the game. And for those of you who maybe have never seen the show before, we like to do these pregame superlatives. We like to list some players we think will do this, make some predictions. And in the comment section, we, as always, want you guys to join in with us. So we're going to start with our first superlative, our Take Me Higher player of the game. This is a star player other than Josh Allen who has to step up for the Buffalo Bills to win. So comment section, let us know who you think the Take Me Higher player is. And Dave, who is your Take Me Higher player of the game?
For me, it's Diggs. I mean, it has to be Diggs in this game. I want to say Gabriel Davis, but I think he's probably more in wild card territory for me. But Stephon Diggs is the alpha. He is the guy that has to show up big and go toe-to-toe with his counterpart in Jamar Chase. The Bengals last week, they beat the Ravens, obviously. The Ravens did a good job in pretty much shutting down everyone on the Bengals other than Jamar Chase. He had 9 for 84 and a touchdown. The rest of the receivers were kind of net, but he used their alpha, and he stepped up for them when he needed to, scored the touchdown. Stephon Diggs needs to do that for the Bills today and be that alpha. He needs to have a big game, whether he scores, goes for a ton of yards, becomes that safety valve, whatever it is. Stephon Diggs needs to get, as I always say, peppered with targets today and be the guy that leads the Bills in that duo with Josh Allen to the next round.
I was so mad. I predicted he would go for 200 last week, and after the first quarter, I was feeling so confident that I was going to be right. And it sort of fell apart. Other guys stepped up, so it was okay, but sort of fell apart. TF Forever says, want to know something crazy? 96.9, the local Buffalo radio station, is playing Creed's Take Me Higher right now. So
hey, there you go.
Perfect timing. The stars are aligning today. Chief Orley says Trey White is his Take Me Higher player of the game. D14 says Gabriel Davis. Locked on Wellness says Ed Oliver needs to eat today. Carolina Frank says Dawson Knox. I like this one from Dante Jenkins. He says Leslie Frazier needs to be our Take Me Higher player of the game. Obviously not a player, a coach, but it's all right. It counts. Jordan Poyer, we got Groot, we got Ken Dorsey as well. So a bunch of different names coming up. The entire defensive line, that's a good one. I'm gonna go with a guy who you said was probably more of a wild card, but I'm gonna go with Gabriel Davis. I think playoff Gabe needs to step up. The Bengals DVOA against number 2 receivers is not very good. I need 100 yards and a touchdown again from Gabriel Davis. I needed him to repeat what he did last week, to build upon what he did last week. And I need to come out there and I need to be consistently a 100-yard, 1 touchdown receiver in these shootout type of games, because this is going to be a shootout. So in these shootout type of games, I need him to be an alpha. And so I need him to be an alpha in this game. CR comes in and throws in James Cook as well. All right. That brings us to our wild card player of the game. This is a surprise player who could affect the outcome of the game. Dave, who is your wild card player of the game?
You've done this a few times, so I'm gonna cheat a little bit on this one. I'm gonna say a defensive end opposite of Gregory Rousseau, whether it's Epinesa, whether it's Basham, whether it's maybe Kingsley Jonathan. I think that there needs to be a performance. It could be one play. It could be one play, honestly, but it could be a very important play in the game that maybe turns the tide, or it's a big stop or whatever. But it's got to be somebody on that defensive line opposite of Greg Rousseau stepping up against this Bengals offensive line when and if the Bengals get into a long down and distance situation, which may not come too often today, right? There may be few opportunities for those types of situations today. Someone opposite of Greg Rousseau needs to step up as a wild card, whether it's Epinesa, Basham, Jonathan, whoever on that the edge of the defensive line.
Chief comes in and he says Cook is his wild card. Timothy Miller, who knows? He might not even be active, so this is a true wild card. Jordan Phillips, if he's active, he's healthy, he could play a huge role in this game. 100% in agreement with you there. Roy Collins says Isaiah McKenzie. I like this one from Connor C. He says Bobby Hart. The way in which our opinion of Bobby Hart has changed over the last year has been quite incredible. Ralph Wilson Sr. comes in and says Reggie Gilliam. Dan Van K comes in and says 49. So I believe he's referencing Tremaine Edmonds there. And D14 comes in and says Cole Beasley. So a bunch of different predictions here. I'm going to go with Dawson Knox. And you might notice a theme here. A couple of people in the comment section said they don't think today is going to be a shootout. I'm expecting this game to be a shootout. So not only do I need Stephon Diggs to push 100 yards and score a touchdown, not only do I need Gabriel Davis to push 100 yards and score a touchdown, I also want to see, on top of all of those things, Dawson Knox push 100 yards and score a touchdown or 2. We cannot kick field goals in this game. We need to dominate in the red zone, and Dawson Knox is our best red zone weapon. So he really needs to step up in this football game. He needs to do his business in the red zone, and the Buffalo Bills cannot kick field goals. They have to score touchdowns. Before we get to the next superlative here, we got Josh G coming in saying, just got my cover one insider. Welcome Patriots today. Coincidence? I think not. Bills Mafia till I die. Let's effing go. Josh, thank you for joining and signing up with the Cover One Pass. If anyone is interested, you can head on over to cover1.football and you can sign up to be a One Pass Club Access subscriber as well. For $57 a year, you get all sorts of Cover One inside information and inside articles and private YouTube shows, and you get a pretty awesome shirt that you can rock on game days as well. So head on over to cover1.football and sign up for your One Pass Club access today. And again, all the stars are aligning here. We got another star aligning as well. All right, next is our Respect You player of the game. This is an opposing player that the Buffalo Bills need to respect in order to win this football game. Dave, who is your Respect You player of the game?
Like when I said this last time, and then he scored a touchdown to open the game in Monday Night Football. It's going to ring true again. Tyler Boyd, you got to respect this guy. A lot of love goes to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, rightfully so. But we cannot forget about Tyler Boyd. Taron Johnson's going to have to make sure that he is on his game today. The easy choices are Chase and Burrow. I get that, right? Like, I'm going to go away from that, kind of like in a respect you way, not pick Joe Burrow because it's an obvious choice. Like we don't pick Josh Allen for the take me higher. So I'm going to say Tyler Boyd needs to be a guy that cannot be overlooked. You can throw T. Higgins in that mix. Obviously, Jamar Chase is a guy that can be easily on this list, but Tyler Boyd to me could be a problem for the Bills. Taron Johnson needs to step up, have a big game. The safeties need to be aware of Tyler Boyd as well. So a guy that's, in my opinion, underrated in the NFL and has been for a while. Tyler Boyd, got to respect him and cannot forget about him.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many names to choose from here. You got the big three receivers and Higgins, Boyd, and Chase. You've got Joe Burrow. You've got Joe Mixon. On the defensive side of the ball, Chief O says, forgot his name, but that safety that's known for being a ball hawk, that's Jesse Bates, who's a very good safety. They have a very good defensive line. Guys like Sam Hubbard, Trey Hendrickson, DJ Reader are all names that we can throw out here. I'm going to go with that linebacker duo. I'm going with Jermaine Pratt, your guy from NC State, Logan Wilson, Josh Allen's guy from Wyoming. These two guys can be a headache for Josh Allen all day, dropping back into coverage. And I just feel like if someone on the Bengals team is going to make a game-defining play on their defense, my money's going to go with one of these two guys making that game-defining play. Last week, Sam Hubbard made that game-defining play for them this week. I think this week, if someone's going to make it, it's going to be one of those two linebackers because they're going to be active and they're going to have their hands full. And both of them are pretty up to the challenge because, as you mentioned earlier, they're quickly approaching Milano Edmonds' level of good as a linebacker duo. All right, on to our next superlative, and this is our hot take of the game. So don't hold this one against us. We're purposely giving a hot take here, even if sometimes it is a stretch. So, Dave, what is your fire sale, your hottest take of the game?
My hot take of the game is Josh Allen runs for over 75 yards and throws for over 350 through the air, counting for at least 425 yards of offense on his own, and leads the Bills to ultimately a win. Sorry to take some of the surprise factor out, but let's be real. We all know who we're going to be picking in the game. Josh Allen, 75 on the ground, 350 through the air. I'm not going to go as far as to predict no turnovers, but I do think he accounts for 75 on the ground, 350 through the air, and a combined 4 touchdowns, whether it's passing or rushing for Josh Allen. Playoff Josh Allen will be alive and well today, even if conditions aren't ideal, and he will be the absolute man today and carry this team.
I like it. I am going with Josh Allen as well because, again, I believe that this is going to be another heart attack inducing type of shootout. So my hot take today is Josh Allen totals 5 touchdowns. You know what? I take it back. No, I'm going to, because my game prediction, I'm going to keep it 5. I was about to go 6 touchdowns, but then that would contradict my game prediction. So I'm going to go Josh Allen 5 touchdowns today. But I think that a lot of the people this week who have been saying that Brock Purdy and Daniel Jones are better quarterbacks than Josh Allen, Cordell Stewart, people like Pac-Man Jones on something called the Believe Network, which I didn't know existed till this week, was saying we only talk about Josh Allen because of his legs. Whether it's Bill Simmons this week saying Daniel Jones is the thinking man's Josh Allen, whether it's every time I turn on ESPN, they talk about Josh Allen's red zone turnovers and use the word how he can't be trusted, and Joe Burrow is some kind of demigod. They call him Joe Cool. Josh Allen shuts everybody up today. 5 touchdowns in a heart attack inducing shootout. QB1 converts in the red zone. He converts in the red zone, and that's what's going to prove a lot of the doubters wrong today. So my hot take of the game is Josh Allen 5 tutties, and that leads us to our final superlative of the game, our take me back to the future game predictions. A score prediction plus a brief sort of little description of painting a little picture of what we think this game is going to look like. So, Dave, I will start with you. What is your prediction for today's game?
Pace is going to be fast to start the game. I do predict the Bills will lose the coin toss and the Bengals will defer. And the Bills will kind of have a culmination of essentially all the adversity that they've gone through this year bubbled through into this game, and they'll face a lot of adversity in this game. But as they have all year, they have come through it. And so while I do think there are going to be moments in this game where things go against the Bills, whether it's a call or whether it's losing the coin toss or something weird where they like force a fumble and somehow the Bengals fall on, like the Bills have had some bad luck in recovering like there's going to be some things that don't go the Bills' way in this game, but ultimately they will overcome. Josh Allen will be the man. The Bills will do enough in slowing down the Bengals' running game to force them to be a bit more one-dimensional and do enough in bending but don't breaking to essentially on the defensive side of the ball hold the Bengals to a fewer enough points to where the Bills' offense can essentially win this game for the team. I do think it will be I guess I'll call it a relatively high-scoring game, but ultimately the Bills have the lead late in the game, and they hold on to that lead and win 31-26.
Yeah, I'm with you. And a bunch of scores coming in. We even got a Bengals prediction, a Bengals 38-24 coming in here from Kenyatta. So we got a Bengals prediction in here, and he says, hold up. He says he's never wrong. So guys, don't even bother turning the game on. Don't worry about it. DH coming in saying 29-19, a bunch of predictions coming in. I'm going to go Bills 38, Bengals 35. I think it's going to be, again, a back and forth shootout the entire way. I think the Bills are down 35-31, about 2-3 minutes on the clock, and Josh Allen's going to lead a game-winning touchdown drive. The Bills defense will get the ball left. The Bengals offense will get the ball left with a little bit of time left on the clock. And the Buffalo Bills defense gets a little 13-second redemption and doesn't allow Cincinnati to get into field goal range to send this thing to overtime. So that is my game prediction. I think it's going to be
going to be nervy.
I might not survive this game. So if you guys don't see me tomorrow, it's because I died. That's probably going to be the reason for that. But all right, so we've worked our way now through our superlatives. Dave, any final thoughts before? And again, a lot of people in here, about 270 right now. Highly suggest that once we log off, you go back through. We had a great conversation at the top of the show, throughout the show, about matchups and everything. You can just rewatch on the replay. You got plenty of time before kickoff. And if you think anyone else would enjoy this as opposed to any of the other Buffalo Bills pregame coverage, just click that share button and send it to them. But any final thoughts before we head out of here?
The Bills have a chance to, if they win today, face the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game, face the Chiefs in the playoffs 3 years in a row, two of them being in the AFC Championship, one being the divisional round. And then the divisional round, the Bills have a chance to get a little redemption today after what happened last year with the whole 13 seconds debacle. And I do think the Bills show up today. They play with a ton of emotion. It's going to be a hugely emotional game for both teams, really, and ultimately come out and set the stage for that AFC Championship showdown in Atlanta. For people who think the Bills got gifted this situation from the NFL, I don't know what to tell you. You're dead wrong. The Bills have probably, if they win this game, had gone through the toughest road to get to the Super Bowl or to the championship game than any other team. Playing a division team for the third time is never easy. Skylar Thompson aside, the Bills took care of that in beating Miami. Playing the Bengals now in what many consider to be maybe the favorite to win the Super Bowl at this point, because everyone loves the Bengals right now. And then if they do win, going to play the Chiefs again in the playoffs for the third year in a row. Don't tell me that the Bills had an easy path, and they've never had an easy path throughout this season, and it's all amounted to them only losing 3 times. So let's get this win today and move on to the AFC Championship game.
Yeah, spot on. I mean, a bunch of people want to make the Brian Dable Coach of the Year, Nick Sirianni Coach of the Year. I don't listen to any of that crap. They're going to win, but my Coach of the Year and the rightful Coach of the Year is Sean McDermott. The adversity that this football team has gone through this year to only lose 3 football games. This team has built up a ton of perseverance this year. So again, you're more than welcome to argue that another team has had a tougher road to get to this point, but you'd be wrong. The Buffalo Bills had to deal with what happened at Tops over the summer. The Buffalo Bills have had to deal with the health situation of their owner. The Buffalo Bills have had to deal with that punter situation that we won't talk about. The Buffalo Bills have had to deal with the death of their tight end's brother, Luke Knox, in some very unfortunate circumstances. The Buffalo Bills have had to deal with not one, but 2 winter storms. One of them, they could barely get to Detroit to play the football game. The second one killed about 50 people in the Buffalo community. The Buffalo Bills have had to deal with Damar Hamlin situation and injuries to Micah Hyde, injuries to Von Miller. Josh Allen was playing on a bum elbow for a good portion of this season. Not a single team in the National Football League has faced as much adversity as the Buffalo Bills this year. The fact that the Buffalo Bills came out of that with the record that they did and the number 2 seed in the AFC East is absolutely incredible. Sean McDermott is the coach of the year, and no team is more battle-tested than the Buffalo Bills heading into this football game. And I really look forward to them putting that on display and utilizing that to hopefully come home with a victory today. And speaking of Damar Hamlin, who had just mentioned, listen, whatever's best for his health is best for his health. I don't want to say like roll him out there, but like I really hope he's healthy enough to make an appearance today, whether it's from the press box or leading the charge or a video message on the board. I really hope in some way, Damar Hamlin can make his presence felt in that pregame. And I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing that today as well.
Yeah, one way or another, Damar Hamlin's impact will be made on this game. Like you said, whether he's there, video message, like there will be an emotional uplift for this team if there wasn't one already. So I am ready for it, and two hours to go until this game. So I don't know what I'm going to do the next 2 hours.
Imagine this perspective. Like, no offense, I don't usually like to call out people in the comment section, but imagine this. All those things that I just listed off. And there's a human being on planet Earth who thinks the Bengals have faced more adversity than this season because the NFL is making them play this game in Buffalo. He thinks they got screwed because somebody almost died in a football field. You played the same amount of games as the Buffalo Bills and you won less. If your team wouldn't have lost 3 games to backup quarterbacks, you would be the 2 seed. So I really have no patience for that argument. Shut up. Just shut up. Like, imagine having that perspective. I don't like to call out people in the comment section, but I mean, come on. Be a human being. That's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hate to end on such a fired up fashion there, but any final thoughts before we head out of here?
I don't know what I'm going to do the next 2 hours. Clean my house. It's going to be like spotless in my house. I was just going to like try to stay distracted, and man, let's just hope tomorrow's show is not a therapy session. Okay, we don't want a Monday therapy session.
I'm just happy. My mother was in town for my wife's baby shower yesterday, so I get to drive her to the airport. So I get a nice little distraction, and I will make sure not to turn on any sports radio on my way there. So that should be a nice distraction. But then I might have to have my wife drive home. I don't know if I'll be able to drive home with this game coming. The shakes are already starting. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. We really appreciate you guys. Again, smash that like button on your way out. You'll have the Cover One post-game show coming at you with Greg and Aaron. I'm not 100% sure that guys like Eric and Anthony are going to do anything, but last week they did like a sort of special pop-up show as like a post-game show. So keep an eye out for that as well. We'll be back tomorrow at 9. You have the Cover Run Roundup tomorrow at 7. So you have all Bills coverage here at Cover One. We've got you covered today and tomorrow. Hopefully it's a joyous, victorious post game, and a look forward to a matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs in Atlanta. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. And until next time, go Bills.
Go Bills.